The Hyperspace, Podcasting in the 25th Century presents. Welcome in, podcast Padawans, to the AHSOKA Archives, our discussion and review of the Disney Plus series, Star Wars, AHSOKA. And as always, my name is Jared.
My name's Matt.
I'm Brian.
I'm Lindsey. Why did Jared sound like he was 80 years old?
Because I'm having a rare beer right now, and I'm stifling a belch.
Oh, nice.
Jared, I actually muted my mic as you were doing your introduction to do that.
You're talking
The
like
belch? Okay.
You're doing like the
Because
Shatner.
I was like,
It's the Shatner kind of monologue where he kind of fights the burp the whole time.
yes. And also, Carrie Fisher, she did commentaries on all the original trilogy movies, and listening to those on the DVD, she always it sounds like she's holding in a fart or stifling a belch.
Oh, goodness.
And
What a legend.
It's quite funny to listen to. But anyway, yes, so we're going to be talking about this week's episode of AHSOKA. We told you we'd come back.
Yeah,
usually we do twofers, but today it's a one-fer.
Guys, before we begin, I'm just going to put it out there, discuss it as we go, but we all knew that in every one of these brand new kind of like live action Star Wars series, we always get, good action, and then we predictably get the filler episode. So, you can't win them all. And most likely, Dave Filoni had a good run, and he probably won't be working in Star Wars after this.
I think probably that's not the case.
I was like, this is a long walk. Where are we going?
Damn right, that plank. You're taking you off that plank.
A long walk. This is
Part
a long
5,
walk.
the Shadow Warrior.
The Shadow Warrior. And before we get started, we need to do the thing we do every week.
Business.
The prop comedy that no one can see.
That's true.
As I furiously look about my desk for something to grab.
We are.
I have with me
you could say anything and nobody would know that you were lying.
I have with me the spoiler fertility idol.
Oh, look
from
at that. Nice.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It looks like a little nugget of golden poop from where you are.
It does.
This kind of looks that way.
Now, see, I'm going to be out of focus for the rest of the show.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right.
So
I got my bag of sand ready.
Okay, I'm right here. I'm ready with my bag of sand.
Okay.
And I'm gonna take the idol and put it on the pedestal, and here we go. And it sounds like the temple is coming down around me. Okay. There's a big boulder heading my way.
You better run.
Okay, Matt, just play the spoiler alert. I screwed this all up. It's
all right,
completely.
there it is.
Thank you.
Guys,
you. Stop the boulder.
If you have not watched this episode of AHSOKA and you have not watched the series, then you should probably just listen anyway, because you're really behind and you need to catch up. We are going to spoil everything.
Yeah,
everything.
Us talking about it's way better than watching it.
I mean, it's like an audiobook. It's better.
Wow. So, as everyone remembers, last week we left off before the credits ran. AHSOKA waking up in the world between worlds and hearing a familiar voice. Hello, Snips. Whoa, who was that? And boom, there was Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. And we cut to black. So, would this episode follow up on the promise of that cliffhanger? Well, fortunately, we start the episode, we hit the ground running. There is a brief shot of the abandoned henge and the planet that they were on. Sorry.
I thought you were going to try to hold it in, and no.
I thought you were getting emotional for a second. Then
I'm sorry.
Emotional.
And there was a lot of emotion in that build. And then we pick up right where we left off. And I thought their first exchange actually made me laugh. you look the same. You look old.
You look old.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. And she's like,
She goes, well, that happens.
What about right before that though, when everybody's kind of looking for them?
Is
Mm.
that before?
Yeah.
Did we?
The first
It
shot
starts
is
with
them coming
the-
over
Wait,
Cetos.
Oh,
the
that's
ghost is there,
yeah, and
parked,
Hera
which-
comes out and they're looking.
which
that's
again,
when, and she
seeing the
tells her
ghost
kid to
there,
wait.
right? Seeing the ghost is amazing too. Again, we know we talked about it last week. Seeing the ghost was cool, but seeing it like
Yeah.
parked there and
Yeah.
getting a look at it, it's really awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the Falcon sitting there almost.
Oh.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting episode in a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways.
There's
So-
a lot to unpack, certainly.
Yeah.
You know, David Tennant as Hugh Wang, Hugh Yang.
Yeah. It's always gonna be Hugh Wang.
I know.
Oh
It's
my
hard
god!
not
People
to do
at work
that.
were
I
walking
don't
into
know
the
why.
office just yelling
Hugh
that at Jared.
Yang.
Yes.
It doesn't exactly
You-
roll off the tongue.
No, it doesn't.
But anyway, his performance throughout the series, and especially at the beginning of this one, is just amazing as a droid. I mean, the emotion that he puts out as a droid, you could tell that he is sad and hurt when he's sitting there.
God, I know.
They never stay they never stay together. they never
to
listen.
me.
Yeah.
And
Oh man, it's just amazing that you have a droid that puts out that much emotion that's not craziness. Like
I
C-3PO.
wonder what is who Yang. Is he part actual prop? And
Hmm.
obviously there's some computer graphics going on with him, but I just wonder, most of the time it looks like he would appear to
Really
be
there.
a practical
Yeah,
set piece.
She puts her hand on his shoulder.
Mhm.
That felt pretty real. I think he's got.
I
Maybe
think
the
it's-
upper torsos were real. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a combination, which is
Yeah.
always probably the most effective way to pull off an effect like that, is to have part of him actually there, and then when he's
Yeah.
walking around and stuff, he's CGI.
Yeah,
obviously.
It helps everybody.
That sounds right. That sounds like about right.
But yeah,
Yeah,
he's holding Sabine's helmet.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna throw it in the water at one
Oh
point.
my god!
I did too, but I thought
They never
"Ah,
listen to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these idiots.
David Tennant's voice is perfect for Hu Yang too. He's got a good Star Warsy kind of voice for a droid. He's got
Mhm.
the subtle Anthony Daniels-esque British accent, which kind of works in makes me believe a droid.
Yes.
And he's like got the arrogant. He's got a good arrogant way of speaking.
Yeah.
That makes him also sound
He's
like a
very well
droid-esque.
cast.
Yeah.
Very well cast.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
100% agree.
He's got a wide range in his
Yes.
character, which is pretty impressive, actually.
So, Hera and Hera comes out of the ship when she can't find anybody. Jason and Chopper come rolling down the ramp, and they talk to Carson, who's doing his rounds. And Carson, I gotta say, Carson has he made me laugh a few times in this episode.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I talked to Lindsey about this today. I'm sorry, we
We're
don't
gonna
talk
tell him we talked about it, Jared.
we don't talk about this, but he is the exasperated everyman. Like, okay, all you magical people, okay, sure.
Whatever.
Like when Hugh Wang's talking to him and he's like, his father was Jedi Kanan Jarrus. The boy has abilities. And he's just like, okay.
It's so good. Oh, it's so good.
I just like his kind of exasperated. I'm just an X-Wing pilot. Please stop with all. I'm going to lose my career for following you people around.
Yeah.
They managed to make him sound like genuinely funny and exasperated with all this magical stuff while still sounding like he belongs in because it feels like that could almost be a modern sort of joke. The way, but it still fits. He's just, I think it's because he seems so genuine. He's just like, all right, Jedi stuff, whatever.
But speaking of Jedi stuff, now I guess we can go underneath the waves or wherever we are and talk about what we see. So Anakin and Ahsoka talk pleasantly for a moment, and he says, "I'm here to complete your training," which, that's kind of a big deal. Ahsoka's journey as a Jedi was cut short by Ahsoka herself, who said, now, Lindsey, this of course is Clone Wars stuff, but when she initially left the Jedi Order, it was because she was wrongly accused of all this crap that was happening, and it was actually there was some sort of court set up, and Palpatine was in charge, and he's like, Ahsoka Tano, how do you plead? And none of the Jedi would help her. None of the Jedi came to her defense.
Yeah,
and
she's like framed.
Yeah, and she's just like, hey, you know what?
Not even
Anakin, he comes in. Anakin is absent for most of this,
right.
But when he finds out what's going on, he comes back, and he's like, what's happening? And she's like, she takes her Padawan braid off, and it's like, I'm quitting.
Where's her braid?
She has a string of beads that she can just remove. Yeah, because obviously she doesn't have hair. But so she walks away from the Jedi initially and says, I'm done. I quit. I'm very sorry that it came to this. And so that's how it was left for several years until they actually finished making the Clone Wars a few years ago. Clone Wars Season 7, which was amazing. And we see a little bit of that in this episode. Season 7 takes place concurrently with Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
So we follow Ahsoka in the Clone Wars during the events of Revenge of the Sith. So right before Anakin and Obi-Wan are called away to basically be in the movie, he gives her her two lightsabers. He says he gifts her them. He gives them to her in a box. And most of Captain Rex, a clone trooper who's quite famous, a bunch of his clone troopers paint their masks like Ahsoka's markings.
We see in this episode.
Yes, you can see them in this episode. And they go with her to Mandalore because she comes back on a provisional basis because they're like, hey, we need your help. Right. You're not a Jedi, but you're a Jedi. Please go to Mandalore and help them there. So she answers the call. She goes to Mandalore because Darth Maul is there, and it's a whole thing.
And that's actually when Order 66 came down. She was at the Siege of Mandalore.
I have seen the stuff about her scenes. I've seen not the stuff, like the stuff
because I think you said you watched some of that in preparation for Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah, the Order 66 stuff. What happened to her there, and with Rex. And...
But before we get to that, we have Anakin and we have Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds on their little space bridge, and they're having their chat, and it's a very, there's so much callback to Empire Strikes Back and to Jedi in this. It mirrors it so well. So you have Anakin, he's going to finish her training, and he brings his lightsaber out. And what does Ahsoka say?
I'm not gonna fight you.
And he drops a great line. He's like, I've heard that before.
Yes, which places us firmly in this is post-Jedi, post-death Anakin, 100%. He's like, okay, I've heard that before.
As Luke Skywalker, his son, tells him, I will not fight you. I've heard that before.
Yeah. And then they start kind of wailing on each other a little bit.
And it's very cool to see Anakin with the blue saber again, his lightsaber.
Hayden Christensen is probably the best swordsman in those movies, besides Ray Park as Darth Maul.
Ewan McGregor does a good job, too.
Ewan McGregor's great. But Hayden in this episode, obviously...
He's show off again.
He's very fluid, very smooth.
Yes, he still has it.
I agree.
And I tell you what, I don't know how much de-aging they used, but he looked exactly the same as he did in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, he looked great.
Yeah, by the end of that sequence,
I was worried it was gonna impede on the acting a little, but I don't think that it did. I think it looked great. I think there was a couple moments in the World Between Worlds where the white, it gives him like that star filter, like vanity filter look a little bit. Like his skin is almost like too perfect.
Smooth.
Yeah. But you can I think it's only there that I feel like I noticed that, and you can kind of maybe play that off where they are.
And they really didn't have that many super close-up scenes with him like that. Most of them were like good medium or long shots when he was talking.
He's walking, and he's. Oh, sorry, Jared.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying he's telling her like, what I'm teaching you is like, you live or you die. It's you can't. It's kind of float in the middle. We're gonna pick one.
Yeah, and it also helps that Hayden Christensen is still in great shape and still looks very similar to how he did back then. I mean, they didn't have.
They needed to do it.
No, they didn't need to, because I mean, he's sort of a ghost, right? So he can
like whatever.
He can do whatever he wants. But so anyway, when he sort of, cuts the bridge in half and she falls,
she's being kind of like obstinate to the training a little bit.
Yeah.
So he kind of like pushes her a little further and harder in it, and takes his saber and smashes the bridge.
Well, she's like, "Is this all you got?"
Yeah.
She's like, "I learned." She's like, "Guess you." What did she say?
I guess you didn't teach me everything, or all your tricks, or something.
You have nothing left to teach me. I think she was like, "There's nothing else you can teach me," and he was like,
and she is the overall theme that we're starting to see here. And honestly, I have to take back a little bit of my criticism, because I kind of see where they're going now. Her stoicism, her kind of like reserved nature that was very uncharacteristic of what we saw in the Clone Wars, whatnot, is starting to kind of make sense. And we're starting to see her, especially now interacting with Anakin, that she's frustrated and holding some resentment there. And she's not open to what he's offering right off the bat, because there's 20 years gap. There's 20 years. Well, there's a whole history of them, and there's anger built up here now. And there's something that we're going to, it unpacks itself as we go through this episode, but it's starting to make a lot more sense. So we see it in this interaction.
I have some comments on that, but I'll wait till we're done with talking about this sequence.
He smashes the bridge and she falls. And she doesn't fall
golf swing.
She falls into like an atmosphere and lands, and something special happens.
She gets up, and she's like 14 years old.
She seems even younger than that.
Yeah. I'm not sure how old she was supposed to be.
I'm sure somebody's already figured it out. Exactly, the battle.
Timeline-wise.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I already know what battle this is. It's the Siege of Ryloth.
Jared's like, it's me.
Because there's a bunch of Twi'leks around in the background. It's the Siege of Ryloth. It's actually the mission where she gets like 6 or 7 clone troopers killed.
Right.
When she comes in.
So how old is she? Is she 14?
14.
Wow.
14. I didn't look that up earlier, I promise.
And this is the first time we've seen a live action young Ahsoka, which is kind of how we saw her for the most of the Clone Wars, and we've always seen a younger Ahsoka. So
and the aforementioned beads, she had those strung on her head, over her head.
Yes, that's true. I think they're attached to her little headpiece.
Yeah, that goes like something like this or something.
Yeah,
like down her back. The front.
It's but yeah, then when the clone troopers start kind of running out of the mist, I was like, oh crap, this is amazing. And it's actually, these are, I mean, we've seen them before in some of the Disney Plus shows, but these are, all the clone troopers in the movies were CGI people, and these are actual guys in clone trooper armor. And so it's
amazing how much better it looks.
It always does.
Amazing. It's not surprising,
like
but
when
it's
real people.
Cooler.
Yeah.
And by the way,
Rex later, like
yes,
I didn't realize how much I loved those like Clone War drop ships.
Oh, the gunships.
The gunships until like I saw one. I'm like, man, I love that ship. I really do. Like there's some stuff from like the prequels that I forgot how much I really liked. And I start seeing this. I see the walkers on the ground. I see the gunship. I'm like, man, this is great.
I like the the sounds they make, that it's really
sound.
cool. And the you see the walkers sort of like in the mist, sort of, and all these explosions going off. Obviously, I think it looks cool, but it's also a cost-saving measure.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks really good for a limited budget. They did a really good job
I mean,
of conveying what was going on.
I don't think they needed to show anything else. But it's also, it's like, okay, this is something they could do on the volume and still look pretty cool.
That, or they go out back and use like some sand piles that they put in the back lot.
And it's her memories. It's like, it's the part of the memory that mattered to her. She didn't need to worry about.
Yeah, and it makes the moment between her and Anakin more intimate. Instead
because
of having a ton of stuff going on, it's focused on them.
Yes, and I really enjoyed the look at Clone Wars Anakin.
Yes,
he looked.
He
that
had his
to me,
armor
that
on.
scene. He looked, and that was a flawless de-aging scene to me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he did look like 22 years old.
And that armor looked very Vader-esque compared to seeing it in animated
the cartoon.
form.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
But
I never thought about that. You're right.
It is the same armor he wears in most of the show, but you're right. Seeing it live action makes it really pop a little more.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it's funny that in these scenes, Hayden Christensen really displays more range and almost likability. Like he's acting. Here's the thing: he's acting in this like Anakin, like Matt Lanter's version of Anakin in the Clone Wars show. That Anakin had personality, and I think the Clone Wars version of Anakin made me like Anakin as a character. Because if you just have Hayden Christensen to go off of, you have this poor guy who's sort of, crippled by, not great dialogue, and he does the most he can with what he has. But here, he's allowed to kind of come alive.
He emotes a lot more, and yeah, you're right.
Yes,
yeah.
And he's like, "What do you want me to be serious all the time?" She's like, "How can you?" Ahsoka is really taken aback by how flippant he seems.
Well, it's also she's really, it's come to the surface with Baylan telling her your legacy is of death and destruction. And that really brought it to the surface for her. And this is what she's now experiencing. She's now 14 years old again. She's in the middle of the war. This is really all Ahsoka has known is conflict. And she's a young kid. I mean, she's a young kid. Imagine being a young kid in a war like this. This is what she grew up in. This is what she was taught in. This is the lesson she learned. And of course, as she knows what happens to her master, it was, she's kind of looking at all this as what good was my life? What good has come of this? Maybe he's right. Maybe Baylan has my number. Maybe all I am is this death and destruction, and I've got nothing else to offer. And Anakin is slowly trying to tell her, you're me. You're not just what I became. You're what I am. I'm what my master was. All that my master was is what I am, and all of what I am is what you are. And I'm more than just war. There's more to me. So, and he's trying to impart this, and it's a tough lesson for her to grasp.
Yeah, and it really brings into stark focus seeing live action, a little kid running. I mean, it's one thing to see an animated Ahsoka run around an animated show, but you put her in this kind of live action situation, with explosions going off, and you see how just small she is, and you're like, holy crap, that the Jedi were dragging kids into and Anakin himself's only like 20, 21. Mm-hmm. He's a young guy. Mm-hmm. And but it's interesting when she watches him in this scene it's a great shot as he's leading the troops off. She sees him from the back, and there's flashes of Vader.
Yeah.
Which, those shots are really epic. Not even the Vader. I love the shot, how it's composed of him leading the clone troopers forward.
real quick, we kind of, we got real caught up in talking about Ahsoka and Anakin, but while this is happening, we flash back to the real world with Hera and Jason, and it's interesting, because Jason is sitting looking out over the water, and he's you hear some sound effects, and he's hearing something or sensing something, and he tells his mother to come over, and she's like, I hear the waves. He's like, no, they're lightsabers. He can hear through the Force something happening close by, and then Hera apparently hears it too.
Yeah, and they cue that Force theme right then too, which was
now
just perfectly placed.
No, the music was awesome again in this episode. I can't wait for them to drop a soundtrack album. But do you think Hera heard that noise? Or are we hearing what Jason's hearing?
She
seems like she channeled it somehow.
Well,
I wonder if he tried to help her hear it.
I mean, Kanan might have put some midichlorians in her.
Wow. Wow. I saw you even hesitate to say that.
I mean, she might be a little Force sensitive now. I don't know. But
but she
do you know
does
that actually do you know that actually truly biologically when a woman is pregnant, a child's DNA does get mixed in?
Well, you know what?
In real life.
I love how so far Dave Filoni has kind of, gone back to and mystified the Force a little more for us. Sabine is learning it. There's not people that are, natural
just
Force
have
users,
midichlorians.
but people who are becoming in touch with it, which is kind of nice that the Force is becoming something more mystical again, not so, as we discussed earlier, science. But anyways, the hunt is back on. Something is happening. And they're not willing just to get off that planet just yet because they found the map. The map is gone.
And Mother of the Year Hera decides to leave her kid on the side of a cliff and go flying off.
He had Chopper watching him. I mean, what could go wrong?
Yeah, you got the droid there. Chopper would probably push him off the edge.
By the way, I'm sorry,
unhinged droid ever.
I saw this funny thing. Speaking of Chopper, along with Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian, is the third most as far as body count goes. Chopper is responsible for the most body count outside of the Death Stars in all of Star Wars.
Wow.
Because in an episode of Rebels, he sabotaged a Star Destroyer, which, as they escaped, the Star Destroyer blew up surrounding ships around and killed all these people, and they're all
wow.
And Chopper has demonstrated his willingness to there's one of my favorite shots.
The droid.
There's another little astromech who's helped them the whole episode,
right? And
they're standing at the cargo bay of the Ghost, and everybody's like, "Hey, you did a great job. You can join our crew." And Chopper just pushes him out the airlock.
Everyone's like,
and everybody's like,
taking my job.
They're like, "Chop!" And he's just like, and then he rolls off.
So Chopper is capable, and he's certainly been proven to be a murderer. So,
all right, fair enough. But why not just bring him?
Yes, exactly. Maybe because I don't know, but that's while sitting there watching,
and it pays off that he stays there.
Well, okay, I'll give you a theory then. Okay, because Chopper has his own sensors, and by taking X-Wings out one way and the Ghost another and leaving Chopper, they can maybe even triangulate better because Chopper has his own sensors that he can scan with.
Chopper is the one who found because you hear Jason call, and that's a funny scene.
It is.
He's like, "Why don't you make Chopper?"
She wants to know how far
it goes for that scene. Because that scene could happen.
Just a little comedy in that scene,
yeah.
Because it's totally like somebody on the phone with somebody. Like, why do you want Chopper? Where is it? She wants to know
how low he's supposed to go.
And you hear as
low as you can go. No, but it was funny. So so they're searching. The Ghost is combing the local ocean, and the X-Wings are out.
I love the shots of all the ships above the waves. The Ghost, if you look at it, you see the spray shooting up onto the ship. It looks so fantastic.
Seeing even the contrail start to come off the X-Wing wings as it goes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Love that stuff.
Yeah, I love that conversation between Hu Yang and Hera in the in the cockpit of the Ghost while they're flying around looking. And they're talking about Anakin and, being, I guess, Ahsoka. They refer to him as Anakin, but, Hera asked about
what was he
Hera,
like?
what was he like? He's like, intense.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
We also learned something while we're still in the real world, that the fleet is now en route.
And do we get a name drop of somebody?
We did earlier. Yep. Organa.
Matt, do you? Senator Organa.
Matt did not take the bait.
Did you hear about that?
No, what?
They talk about Senator Organa.
Oh, cool.
He says
Leia better get there soon.
Well, they say
because we talked about them name dropping anyone from the original trio.
Yeah, and so they said it was Carson says Senator Organa can only run cover for us for a little while longer. So Leia's helping them, we find. Which is a cool touch. I mean, that's all I need.
And it also tracks back to Rebels too, because she helped them in Rebels.
Yes, she did.
And it's I don't need to see the people. You're right though. A good name drop here and there just to keep it connected is all I need. So
yeah. So we found out that Leia is helping them. She's trying to keep them off their back, but they sent 3 cruisers to see what's going on.
So they're en route. So we now have the clock is ticking. So,
and then now we go back into the spirit realm.
We've been transported to the Siege of Mandalore.
Yes, which is awesome. We see some live action,
awesome.
Maul DeLoreans with their Maul things.
Death Watch.
And this is where I thought for a second, I was like, are they going to show Darth Maul? Because Ahsoka, this is where Darth Maul fights Ahsoka and gets captured.
So good too.
They should have done that.
It was that was an excellent storyline. Everything with Maul in the Clone Wars was fantastic.
So Maul was there, and Maul and Ahsoka are actually together during Order 66.
Yeah,
and
when it goes down, right?
They're sort of helping each other, but not really. But it's very interesting.
We're like using each other.
But
I liked Maul's perspective of that, though. It was great. It was fascinating. I like how he broke it down. He's like, everyone's in trouble now.
Yeah, everybody's. But so Anakin shows up at the Siege of Mandalore, and he's like, I don't know this battle. Yes. She goes, this happened after we parted. And
he's right now kissing Padme on a saying
this is Revenge of the Sith territory.
About to drop off the kids at school.
He's like yeah, now I'm he's off doing Revenge of the Sith stuff at this time.
Right.
And this scene is, I think, really good.
Yeah.
Where Ahsoka is like, and this is where he gives the legacy speech, which is like, you've got all my knowledge and I have all of my masters and his masters before him. He says, you're part of a legacy now. And it's kind of cool because she's that lineage from like Yoda to Qui-Gon to Obi-Wan to Anakin to her.
And I like how she's like, yeah, and what legacy you've left me.
Yeah, with death and war.
Yeah.
And then she drops kind of the bomb that the whole episode I was waiting for. It's
directly at him.
She's like, you are too powerful, and
no one realized like how powerful, and what was the word? It wasn't dangerous, but
maybe dangerous was the word. I'm not
whatever
sure.
It was. It was it was the trigger.
It made sense to me. Sorry,
go ahead.
It made sense to me that she waited so long though, because it's like that thing where it's all you want to talk about with someone, but it's going to change the whole vibe of how everything's going. And I think at first she's just like excited to see him, and then things as they progress, she's like, okay, at some point I'm gonna have to bring up the Darth Vader thing.
And then he's like, oh, so that's what this is about. And it's like, I was sitting there going, yes,
I think it was
What
really
else is it
funny.
about?
I
But
thought that was funny. He's like,
you've
oh,
learned nothing.
this-
He's like, this is all it is now. This is all it is. He said, then this is all it's going to be.
But she's like, she's right. But that's exactly what happened and why she was waiting so long. Because once she said that, it changed everything that was going on.
And the
He
red
breaks
saber
out the red
comes-
saber,
It's awesome. I love
Yep.
seeing that.
Sick.
and the Sith eyes,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
and
His face gets like more.
It's a little
fricked
haggard
up.
or something. Yeah.
maybe they just turned off the de-aging.
Oh.
They said, "Go out, Hayden, and have a few drinks before
That was
we
it.
shoot."
By the
this."
way, if you noticed, even though he was using two hands, Vader usually used one. He did have a few swings that were much more slow and powerful than like you'd see with Vader swinging when he fought Ahsoka the second time with the red saber. It was much more of a Vader style than it was Anakin's
yes.
Yeah.
flourish, if that makes sense.
Well, I think we're meant to believe that is Darth Vader before the armor.
And it's a great fight. And something
Mhm.
amazing happens with Ahsoka. You guys obviously caught that.
Where she has the red eyes
Right.
or
her
the
eyes.
yellow eyes.
Which I
Yeah.
Which
love that touch.
when she grabs his saber and puts it on his throat, like they flash.
Yeah.
But and this is a moment that I think that goes back to Return of the Jedi. And it's what he was hoping would happen. Where she has the chance to kill him and throws the saber away, just like Luke did. So I think at that point he's like, okay, she's going to be okay.
But you see, what that was, I think, is that he's passing on a lesson that he learned from his son. And through putting her through this test, he was hoping that was what was going to happen. So Luke actually taught his own father that lesson. And then he, in turn, passed that lesson on to her. I loved it. I think it's great.
Yeah,
it's
it's really cool. And
yeah.
you know, he calms down and he
The-
gets his eyes back.
The transformation, like you were talking about earlier about giving him a chance to show his range, like showing him going from Vader back to Anakin, that transformation of his like expression, his emotions, his face, that's something you never see in the prequels, which would have been a really great moment to show him like struggling between both of them.
I think,
and it's so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, he's a good actor, and if given a chance, which he was given a chance here, you know, interestingly enough, you know, 18 years later, to sort of play this again in this way, it was good to see, and I think it's I'm happy this is now part of his Star Wars resume.
Yeah,
because it in retrospect it kind of makes some other stuff even better. So
yeah.
So
You know,
here's
when they're
I'm sorry,
well,
Brian, go
when
on.
they're having that fight, you know, he says something. It sounded very Vader-esque. He goes, "You lack conviction."
Yeah, and they even
And-
I think they even James Earl Jonesed him up a little bit there.
Yeah,
too.
they did. It just seemed very fitting.
I liked when I agree, and I think one other line that reminded me of that, of like a Vader kind of dialogue, was when he goes life or death, and she goes no, and what does he say?
That is not correct.
Incorrect.
Yeah.
Or incorrect, yeah.
I thought that was really good.
But so the lesson.
Wait, hold on.
Go ahead.
Real quick. So the World Between Worlds is an interesting, newish kind of Star Wars thing here. So what about going back to like Dagobah, where Luke went into the cave? I wonder now if that cave is going to be, because we know like the Night Sister Temple is an evil-esque place. Maybe that's where a nexus of the World Between Worlds, you know, connects. That's why, you know, the Purgles might choose that place. What if in Dagobah, which is a dark side influenced cave, I wonder if that place is a nexus for the World Between Worlds itself. And this is where the Force brings influences in to teach and whatnot.
Yes, it's not, and yeah, because it's not. If you think, like, you know, you just said, this is not the first time we've seen this sort of, you know, even in the movies going back to 1980. This is that thing with Luke. What was that? I mean, he was fighting Vader.
Yep.
He cut Vader's head off, but it showed him something. It taught him
teaching
something.
him.
Yeah.
And that makes, I think, if Dave Filoni chooses to sort of, maybe he calls George and goes, "Hey, George, is it okay if I do this thing here?" Sure. Sure, Dave. I think that's
George, you're much more civil than you used to be.
I'm not talking about, smelling people's butts and all that stuff. I don't, but
turn a corner, George. I'm proud of you.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
$4 billion. He donated that all charity. I was going to say $4 billion to do that.
But I think if they choose to retroactively make Dagobah part of that, that would make perfect sense to me, but for years I've just accepted it as this is the mysticism of the Force, but what is this stuff? It's the same thing. And today, me and Lindsey were not talking about this.
No,
maybe, but when keep your hand down. When the Force ghosts appear in the real world, they have a certain appearance. They're like glowy blue people,
And they're very direct. It's almost like they're the same people and they're there. They're just
yes. Now I think Anakin, the Anakin we saw in this episode I think he was a Force ghost kind of living where these Force ghosts go. And when they choose to come out into the real world, then that is how they appear to people. Like at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Which, by the way, speaking of Force ghosts, Anakin as a Force ghost was wearing the white robes. He never, ever wore white robes ever in the show. It was always black.
What are you talking
about? He doesn't wear. He's wearing like
in Return of the Jedi.
In Return of the Jedi, when he becomes a Force ghost.
That's just because they replaced his head with Sebastian Shaw's head with.
I understand
Hayden
that.
Christensen.
I understand that.
But
they could have connected that. They could have connected that by having him wear that in this, but I think they intentionally chose not to do that.
Sure, because if he's in this spiritual plane where he is, he can appear however he chooses.
He doesn't have to be a moisture farmer in the plane.
Here we go with the moisture farmer.
That's the Jedi uniform.
Okay? That's like Matt's biggest hang up. He's like, they took Uncle Owen's clothing from episode 4 and made it the de facto Jedi uniform.
They made Obi-Wan Kenobi because he's wearing robes to look like a Tusken and a hermit and assume that's what Jedi wear for, like, that's their uniform.
All of them.
Listen, you don't know nothing, Matt.
I mean, in a lot of the
Ayla Secura doesn't wear that outfit.
Oh, look, Yoda's wearing it. Yoda's wearing a burlap sack that's rotted away. Oh, it's his uniform.
That's his Jedi robes. Listen, there's no need to argue with Matt about this because
I'm sorry.
It's going to be a sore spot until the end of time with him.
I was thinking about this when watching, and if you notice that after this is all over and Ahsoka is rescued, which we see shortly, that she is much more optimistic, more joyful. It's like a weight has lifted.
Gandalf is back, baby.
And this goes back, if you think about it, her performance in Mando and in the first 4 episodes of this is kind of stoic and kind of bland and kind of just joyless. And now I think it was by design.
No, 100%.
And she was wearing gray up to this point. Now she's in white. Her headband is changed.
Ahsoka the White.
And by the way, we see a bald Ahsoka. You saw that meme I sent earlier today.
Yes, nobody likes that.
I don't understand. Has that been seen before?
I don't know.
Have we ever seen this before?
What, her bare head?
Yeah.
No.
I feel like you have an opportunity as a makeup artist or designer to do something cool with her. She has all these cool white patterns on her face. like to do something cool here too, and they were just like, nah.
They're just like, oh,
There's
why
your
she
line.
that's why she wears the leather headband, because there's nothing
Like,
going
I know
on.
how
No,
this
but Brian's
looks.
right. She has
Yeah.
balance as a Jedi. She's now a Jedi. What you're seeing is the first time ever Ahsoka Tano is now an official Jedi.
Okay,
She's
what?
completed her training.
Now let me ask you this, because I don't know if the answer's cut and dry.
Okay.
What was the final lesson Anakin taught her? What was it? What made her see?
To me, she was kind of oscillating, like she's like depressed, traumatized, but kind of still coasting through, not really choosing to actively be a part of things, or even actively like become full hermit like Obi-Wan. She was still doing stuff, but she was kind of half there, half not. This feels like fully committing to living.
Yeah,
and
she has worth.
Yeah.
She realizes that there's more to her than what she thought. That there's more that she has to offer the universe and the Force, and she's a much more balanced person coming out of it.
But when she told Anakin she wanted to live, she found her conviction.
To live,
in that
moment, because he says,
I want
at the beginning,
to live.
You lack conviction,
right?
And now she no longer lacks conviction,
exactly.
And it is reflected, as you guys said, in how she carries herself and sort of how she just, she's kind of lights up a room now.
Yeah, and she feels like, and I know we're jumping ahead a little, but when she's outside the ship and she knocks on the window, she's like, go in the whale. So he's like, okay, but you got to get in here. And she's like, oh, I don't want to get back inside.
So the ghost rescues a very catatonic Ahsoka under the water. Thank God all those head tentacles are lungs, apparently, because she's held her breath the whole time.
However,
you don't know that they're not.
But how long has she been there?
She's been there for a while.
Enough where they're circling the ocean for her for a long time.
At least a few hours.
Well, I don't think it's in real. I think it's obviously the world between worlds is a compressed time. But either way, they rescue her, they bring her back, and they let her know that Jason was the one that helped find her. And, this is all great stuff. She's very upbeat. Her ship is now parked with the ghost.
And I'll tell you what, Jason doesn't annoy me. A child actor, he doesn't get on my nerves.
He's minimal.
And the girl that played Ahsoka wasn't annoying either. She was awesome, top notch.
Like, she had that scene where she was comforting that clone trooper and she starts crying. That was great. And that's the little girl who played young Gamora in Infinity War.
She's also the daughter in Barbie. She's like,
was she in Game of Thrones too?
Successful child actor around right.
I gotta look her up.
Okay,
I'll tell you this. It's funny, right? Ever since the sequels came out, the Force is getting all kinds of new powers. Some more impressive than others, but Ahsoka's fun little thing is that she can kind of read imprints of what has happened in the past through emotional bonding to objects or places, whatnot. So we have a bit of a cheat code here. What happened?
Nothing. I know Lindsay's going to jump on this.
It's okay.
I was going to let it go.
Because
Lindsay,
this power is something she's very familiar with.
It's the power that Cal has in Jedi Order.
Okay.
And they say it's a very rare Jedi power.
Cool. Okay. Game. Which is definitely rare.
Remaining Jedi have.
She picks up the half of the destroyed map and she can see what happened. She goes through the kind of like scenario. She sees that Sabine has willingly gone to the ship and she's now in another galaxy. And they're like, well, we have to figure this out. But the fleet is now arriving. And it's time to make a quick decision here. When what they did was awesome. Awesome.
With the whales.
Ahsoka looks up in the sky and sees the Purgles and she says, I think I have an idea. And she mind melds with them.
So cool. I didn't tell Jared earlier when we weren't talking about it at work that this entire sequence was one of the coolest sci-fi things I've seen in a long time. It just felt so cool.
Well,
watch
I
the
tell you,
whole thing.
before we get to that, one of my favorite parts of the episode was, hey, will you train me to be a Jedi? No.
No.
Okay, will you help me build a lightsaber? No.
Oh, do you know how to build a lightsaber? Yes. Will you help me? No.
No.
Yeah, Hu Yang is always he's great.
Why would he need to build one? He could just go take one out of the supply
Oh, yeah.
closet.
Right?
So there's
But-
which you never know. So the fleet has now arrived. There's 3 cruisers that have arrived, and Carson and the X-wings go to kind of stall.
Does a
intercept and stall.
terrible job of trying to.
God.
Oh well, yeah, she hasn't finished her mission yet. Did we talk last week that the surviving X-wing fighter pilots, the guy who's not Carson is Brendan Wayne, the Mandalorian.
Yeah, the guy who plays that physical
Yeah.
Mandalorian.
He's the guy.
I did.
Yeah, he's the guy who's in the armor. When
Did we talk about it? I saw it or something. But
I think
Yeah.
you mentioned it
That's
offline afterwards.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah, that's
okay.
right. Which I thought was kind of neat. But yeah, so we're flying up into the sky. There'll be whales here. That sequence, and then of course they see she's like that one over there. Like she just
There's
sees
a
a
big
big one,
The giant one.
the coming out of the
Super
cloud.
whale.
They do a great
Um,
job of showing the scale of that. They do
Oh,
a really good.
Yeah.
Especially when they pull back and you see Ahsoka ship and the ghost, and they're like
Yes.
this big.
Yeah.
And this power that she has was set up in the Tales of the Jedi cartoon that we watched, because that saber-toothed tiger that tries to kill her,
Oh yeah.
Yep, you're right.
she's able to communicate with it. And she does the same thing with the whale, the Purgle. And it's also worth noting now, of course, she is totally decked out in white.
Her outfit is freaking.
I think her outfit's awesome looking.
Yeah.
So
She looks like she's wearing the same thing at the end of Rebels, the same white cloak, right?
and that is something else that is I'm very intrigued about, because we see they sort of recreated that final scene of Rebels in the first episode of this show, where Sabine goes up to the portrait and she taps it with her finger, and she turns around and Ahsoka's there waiting for her. In the finale of Rebels, Ahsoka's wearing all white. Her robe is white. She has a staff. But in the live action version, she's wearing her gray, and the scene plays out a little different. I don't think we've seen the ending of Rebels yet. I think that ending is something that has yet to take place.
Okay. All right.
That's just my
Interesting.
opinion.
I didn't like how. Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
When she got back on the ship and he was like, and they go into the whale's mouth, and it's like this great moment. And Hu Yang's like, so we know they're taking us to where Ezra is? And she's like, oh, I don't know. I have no
Any
idea.
place is
Just
better
kept
than going nowhere, right?
Not
Yeah.
really sure,
It's a
but
great line.
we're
Which-
gonna go for a ride.
Which I think also speaks to this awakening she's had.
Yeah.
Optimism.
She's tired of just sitting around.
Mhm.
She's like, I don't know, let's go see what happens. With, of course, her smile and the brightness in her eyes, where she's just sort of, she woke up from this funk that she was in.
And
And-
this whole sequence, the music that plays in with the Purgles leaving the planet. By the way, I watched the sequence like 10 times. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's really
Uh,
good. And it's and it brings me go ahead.
Was this the X-wing fighters are even smiling? Like when they come out into space from the planet,
Yes.
and they're all like,
They're just like,
and-
oh man. And it's
they're like
funny
us. They're like, this is so cool.
That Carson just decides to tell him the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, look, okay, the whales are going to take them to the galaxy they need to
Nothing
go to.
can stall you better than this story.
And then they see them, and the captain of the ship's just like, oh, we get out of the way, move, which it's funny. There's not much evasive action happening here.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
wouldn't it be
no,
better
it's
just to
like,
stand still and let the whales go
Like an
around you?
ambulance.
Yes.
which is what they do anyway.
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
whales
pretty
just
much.
move around them.
Yeah.
And then, we go to hyperspace, which is really cool looking. They have this bioluminescent stuff on them. And then, boom,
they
they're
fan out
gone.
their tentacles.
But you see it from the inside of the mouth of the thing from Ahsoka's view. It was really cool.
It's like glowing.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I can't wait to see what happens next week.
What's
and
this other galaxy gonna be?
I know, right?
I don't know. This is like truly uncharted territory for Star Wars. I'm just going to say that watching a show like this, Dave Filoni, he wrote it, he's producing it, he directed this episode. Dave Filoni's worked at Lucasfilm for almost 20 years. He was there when they were looking for people to do the sequel trilogy. He was right under their nose. They actually shut down his show, The Clone Wars. They said, "No, Clone Wars is over. You can stay employed here, but we're going to go find the hot directors of the day to usher in this new era of Star Wars." And that's fine. I understand why they did that. Nobody knows who Dave Filoni is, and he's unproven in a live action capacity and all that stuff. But if they had showed any kind of patience, what they have is a sequel trilogy that is a narrative mess that is, its legacy is now one of mockery, now probably even more than the prequels used to be. The characters and situations and plot lines that nobody thinks about or cares about anymore.
I wonder if it isn't going to be, though, like people used to say that about the prequels, but all the kids.
It's interesting.
I
don't know.
Kids who are enjoying the sequels?
Well,
I don't know.
You know what? I'll tell you maybe that's the case, but I'll tell you where the prequels had an advantage over the sequels. Okay. Both were at the time heavily criticized.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage of the prequels is that it engaged young kids into Star Wars at the beginning of a story.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
True.
So young kids were at least got to see the beginning of a story and had options to continue on learning more about it. The sequels, first off, if you're a young kid seeing the sequels, they probably weren't that bad to watch, but you've seen the end of a story. Okay. And they weren't the best movie. So now how inspired are you to go back and relearn the entire thing from the start? Mm-hmm. See, Lindsey, you had the advantage. I'd say, look, I loved the part where we came in because we came in the beginning and we were left with all the answers, but had all the questions. Well, why? Why is it like this? So we got that in the prequels. You got to come in from the start, learning the story linearly from how it started, start to finish.
I think I'm trying to remember what my young life was like. And I think I started with Phantom Menace, I think. And I must have liked it because my parents were like, "Oh, here's the rest of Star Wars." Saw all of the original trilogy before Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith came out, and then got excited to go to the theater to see the sequels.
Yeah.
And I remember liking them at the time, but then everybody was dogging on them, and I dogged on them, and I think I still dog on them. I still dog on them a lot.
You know what? Every once in a while, I'll catch parts of something, or I'll feel like I want to watch this scene, and I'll go to Disney Plus and pull it up. And there are things in the sequels I do enjoy, but the way I think now is that these stories are the sequels to Return of the Jedi that I care about.
Jared and I may or may not have had a text chain where all we said was, I feel, and look, let's just hope and assume that Ahsoka lands the plane and that this series ends up spectacular. Okay. Because we're not done yet, but let's just assume that the series lands the plane. Between Andor at the beginning of the sweet spot of Star Wars, starting the journey, and Ahsoka finishing it, I'm okay with that part of Star Wars. Between Andor, Rogue One, the original trilogy, and Ahsoka, I feel pretty good. And of course, peppering in the Clone Wars as backstory stuff. But I feel that that's a pretty good start to finish story right there. Mon Mothma has a whole thing from start to finish. We see, We see all of our friends in this sector of Star Wars, and if they can land Andor and they can land Ahsoka, they have something pretty special.
Well, the Ahsoka is not the end because Dave Filoni does have his movie.
Oh,
I don't think we're going to get resolution in Ahsoka.
You think it's just a big setup for the movie?
I think Ahsoka is going to end with Thrawn escaping, or it's going to be a cliffhanger. But I feel more confident in the leadership of this particular series than I do with Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams playing, a game of telephone with their sequels saying, okay, well, here's where I'm leaving off. You do what you want.
Right.
I like the fact that they obviously have a plan. They plotted out where they want to go. The season 3 of Mandalorian notwithstanding, which was not great, but I think there's a plan in place for at least up through Dave Filoni's movie, which I believe he is going to call Heir to the Empire. I think that's going to be the name of that movie.
Good name.
And
that's a solid name. Lots of Star Wars DNA there.
Yeah. I wonder if, so this is all, 30, 20 years before the sequels.
Yeah, obviously, probably about 20-ish, a couple of decades.
Obviously, all these people, it makes you wonder, what happened to all these people? It makes me wonder that. So you got a whole nother galaxy that they could all be in, though.
True.
And not interrupt any canon that way. So I feel like I'm predicting, and then you can do it if you get all these people over there.
You can do whatever you want.
All the canon that has all this stuff wrapped up in it, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sure,
you're right.
So this episode that we just watched was the first episode in Ahsoka that was about the namesake of the show.
Yeah. In its entirety.
It took 5 episodes to get there.
Yeah.
But we finally got an episode about Ahsoka and her personal journey versus some other things that we got along the way. I mean, we got a lot of Ahsoka, but it wasn't really about her. It seemed like it was more about everybody else.
That I liked, but I was like, I'm here for Ahsoka, though.
Well, I think that, of course, the curse of these shows is that, especially when they don't use the Netflix model and just drop them all at once, is that we have to be patient and traditionally
trust.
We are not.
There's a narrative unfolding.
We are not patient, and we want to know, like, what? That's stupid. Why does she do that? What's going on? Why are they doing this? But I think now the table is set. Yeah. Okay, Ahsoka's got her head screwed on straight. She's re-energized. Her training is complete, and they are going now for these last 3 episodes into. I just have no idea what's going to happen.
Well, having to wait a week is a lot better than having to wait 3 years.
Yes, absolutely.
They used to torture us this way back in the day, and it really wasn't that long ago.
Yes,
even with the sequel trilogy. Of course, they were layering in Solo and Rogue One.
Right.
But it is cool that we're getting this kind of story on a weekly basis. And of course, it will be available for all to binge in like 3 weeks. So
I think it's a bingeable. It seems like it would be a good show to binge.
Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. I would recommend this to, Jared and I were talking how we were attempting softly to have our counterpart Mike maybe check it out, because Mike did a huge deep dive on the Clone Wars and he liked Rebels. And we told him, I said, look, I know you've been, in not so many words,
you're boycotting
Star Wars. I said, but you might want to just give this a shot and check it out, because it has a lot of stuff that you might really like.
There's just no way he would not respond to stuff in this show.
And the fact that you could binge it, I think that would be the way he needs to watch it. I'm glad he's not watching it like us. And I hope our co-host Mike at some point binges Ahsoka and gets some real some real satisfaction and entertainment.
You know, I found that Andor was actually very bingeable.
Oh, I'm sure.
I watched it back in May, right before I went on vacation. And I sat down over the course of like 2 or 3 days and just hammered the whole thing out. And I ended up watching like 1 or 2 episodes one night, 1 or 2 the next night, and then I watched all the rest of them on that Saturday. And it was like, wow, this plays really well straight through. So,
I need to.
And Ahsoka would be even better.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I'm looking forward to Andor season 2, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Yes,
everybody. Now, I'm not sure. Program note: I'm not sure what we're going to be doing here for the last few episodes. We haven't really talked about it, but
why don't we do this?
Okay.
Why don't we pause and wait 2 weeks for the next 2 episodes,
and then do the finale.
We'll give our predictions for the finale, and then we'll do our finale episode, wrapping it up with the final episode and our thoughts of the season.
I love it.
Sounds
Matt, you cracked it. And you know, next week you guys will have brand new mics to talk into.
Yeah,
the next time
I'm
we
excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a little inside baseball. Nobody knows what we're talking about. But anyway, so we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you for joining us this week. We will see you back here in 2 weeks. Please tell your friends about the show. Subscribe, share it, and may the force be with you. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for. Don't give me the rap sign. I will kill you. I will physically kill you.
I was saying I'm excited. I'm like revving up.
No. Listen, okay. Anyway, gang, thank you for. I got one too. Listen, okay. Let me do 3, 2.
You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to The Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us here next time as we take you into the 25th century.